Alright, part 2 of the custom Jazzmaster here. We're going to do sanding and some final finish work. Got my rigid oscillating sander here, and I'm going to clean up the edges. So I've got a 100 grit piece of sandpaper here, and we'll sand down the edges, and then we'll move over to the spindle sander and we'll clean up the curves that I can't get to with that edge sander. I bought 2 of these tools years ago, probably one of my best investments. And so now we've got to sand off that curve. So the arm curve needs a little bit of work after the bandsaw. And we'll take this outside here and clean this up. Part 1 of this Jazzmaster, we did all the routing and gluing, and part 2 here, we're doing all the sanding and cleanup. Lots of sanding to get this to look right. With that little void I've got on the corner, I'm going to use some epoxy and some pearl dye, and we are going to fill it. I did a whole nother video on this, but I wanted to show you guys in this just a quick review of how I did that. I've got some 2-part epoxy, mixed it up, 2 ounces and 2 ounces, and then we're going to drop in the pearlescent. All in, I think I spent 15 minutes doing this. I forwarded this pretty quickly. So I'll make sure this looks good. Dump this in, and then we'll leave it. So once we're all mixed, it's cold in the garage, so the stuff isn't moving all that well. I came back with a flame and cleaned it up. Made sure I've got all those gaps filled. We let this dry then for about 10 days. After that, we came back outside to my Craftsman table router. And since this is a little bit thicker of a guitar body, I'm using a 3/4 bit as a roundover. Usually a Tele or a Strat will use like a 3/8 or a 1/4 inch. Here we've got a full 3/4, and since this body's a little bit thicker, this will make it a little bit more comfortable. So we loaded this in, slowed down the router slightly, and we're going to do each side here, top and back, with this larger bit. We'll make sure that we drill the neck holes perfectly. So I've got my template. We'll line this up, put a mark in, take this then over to my drill press and drill those out. And we're going to do a little bit of custom work here. So since the body is a little bit thicker, about 2 inches versus 1 3/4 inches, I'm going to shave down that neck pocket on my router outside. So this will allow me to still get that same playability on those higher frets, but give me a little bit more room with this. So I've got a flat bottom router bit here, and I'm going to take off about a 1/4 inch off that neck pocket on the back side. So I'm outside here with my overarm pin router. This is a Stanley pin router from I think the 40s. This is probably my greatest tool that I have. Got a lot of cool tools. This is it. This top routing allows you to do tons of different things with the guitar body. If you ever see these on eBay and it's close to you, get it. Your grandkids will love you if they get into woodworking. So we took about 4 passes off. And then we came downstairs to the basement, and with a chisel, we started chiseling out to get this to match up. So all in, this probably took about 20 minutes. But then I've got a perfect neck pocket that's the right size, maybe slightly smaller. And then this gouge chisel cleans this all up and gets that nice smooth feel. So once we chisel it off, I've got a file. We'll file it, make sure it's nice and flat. Make sure then I've got any edges off. There's no gouges in the wood. I got no holes. And then we'll come back and sand this sucker. So I've got 120 grit, We're just making sure that any of the gouge marks, any of the lines from the chisel are out. And we'll just go over this corner in the pocket and make sure it's looking pretty. Then we're ready for final sanding, which takes forever. One last thing we had to do is the body of a Jazzmaster is slightly bigger. This Claro top wasn't going to fit. So what I'm going to do on that top horn is get my file. I've got a Japanese dragon rasp, I guess they call it. I think I got this from Stu Mac. And we'll just go and pull that top back so that it's all flush. I thought about doing a carved top here and bringing the top down a little bit and getting a little fancy. I didn't think I wanted to do that after I started playing with it. With the bridge that I'm using and the figure of the wood, I didn't think I needed to do that. And I thought it looked pretty good at this point. So we're just going to file it and get it to look good. Probably spent another 10 minutes getting this to look right. Once we got all the filing done here, we'll take this outside and you can see the polar vortex that hit us in Chicago. Freezing, -20, snowing, everything's covered in snow. I've got my gloves on, my fan blowing, so it's probably like -40 because I've got my squirrel cage fan blowing all the dust out. And I've got about maybe an hour sanding here. Cleaning up that top edge, cleaning up the body, sand, 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 sand. Lots of sanding to get this to look right. We went from 120 all the way up to 600. And then before I put any finish on this, I wanted to clean the top and the sides up so I don't get any bleeding between the two woods in that maple. And I can also see if there's any additional sanding that needed to be done. So I've got some naphtha. And we're cleaning up, getting all the dust out. What happens if I took finish to this right now, I would get a little bit of that in each of the pores of the maple, and didn't want to do that. One final thing we're going to do is I've got a center hole punch. So this marks the center between 2 inches. It's a nice little tool to have to drill that end jack and output. Put that away. Come back with my drill and a 7/8 bit. This is a brad point bit with my Makita drill. Got this clamp down from the top, and we'll go ahead and drill this out. Trick with this is to go slow and make sure that you don't pop through and smash your body, which I've done a bunch of times. Time for True Oil. Not going to show you the whole process here with True Oil, but I put about 10 coats on. And the trick here was that first coat is you seal the maple real quick, and then you seal the rest of the body. That way you've got nice, clean, no sawdust, no dark sawdust in the maple lines. So we'll put, I think, 4 coats on outside, let it gas off. That first couple coats, it gets really smelly. And then I've got some steel wool here, and for each second application, I'm going to steel wool it down a little bit, and then come back and use that to fill the grain. This gets you a much smoother top, much better looking top. So then for the front, since it's open grain Claro walnut, lots of oddness in this top, lots of little gaps and pores here and there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sand down with the True Oil, and this will help fill the pores with a little bit of True Oil, a little bit of sawdust, especially around the pickups. Lots of little tiny pinprick holes. I didn't want to use a filler on this at all. You would ruin the top. But this is just a trick to get that mirror glass top and fill just a little bit of the holes that are popping up here. I didn't want to fill all the holes of the body. Wanted to leave that natural burl character. But this helps in a couple spots to get it looking perfect. So after this, then we let this dry for 7 days, and we came back and buffed it out. I don't do this pore filling on the back because I've got this torrefied ash. Ash has huge open pores, and that wouldn't do anything to help. So we just did this on the top to just fill it, get a little bit more mirror-ish type of finish. Come back to the buffer and begin to buff this out. I am not putting a whole lot of pressure on here. I didn't let this dry 3 weeks. Like I said, I only let it dry for 7 days. And so we just want to get some of those lines out and get it to look pretty good. So here you can see I've got very light pressure. I'm not really leaning into it at all. And you can see how beautiful that top looks. This is that custom buffer I built years ago. I plopped it onto the back side of my shop here in the basement. And we'll just buff this out. And we're only really going to buff out the top, but just buff out the sides and back a little bit. And this guitar is looking beautiful. Beautiful body, beautiful figure in this wood. The burl looks awesome. All I have to do next is get the neck and hardware on here, and that'll be part 3. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next video.